Hey guys, my name is Reno, and today I'm going to be teaching about parallel lines and transversals. Alright, so before we head on to the actual lesson today, I want to tell you guys something before we start. So all of the theorems and the examples that we're going to do is based on our previous lesson that we learned, parallel lines and parallel lines being cut by transversal. All these theorems are based on the angles that are created by that. So if you need to know or learn about that, pause this video, go watch the previous lesson, come back, and then you'll understand this lesson much clearer. But if you don't need to, then let's get started. Alright, so the corresponding angles theorem. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of corresponding angles are congruent. So according to this theorem, angle 2 and 6, angle 1 and 5, angle 3 and 7, and angle 4 and 8 are all congruent. Alright, the next, alternate interior angles theorem. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of alternate interior angles are congruent. So for example, angle 3 and 5 and angle 4 and 6 are congruent according to this theorem. Alright, the next, the alternate exterior angles theorem. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate exterior angles are congruent. For example, in this, angle 2 and 8 and angle 1 and 7 are congruent because of this theorem. And then lastly, the consecutive interior angles theorem. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of consecutive interior angles are supplementary, not congruent. So for example, in this, angle 3 and 6 are supplementary because they are consecutive interior angles, and then angle 4 and 5 are supplementary because they are consecutive interior angles. Alright, so here's some practice. The measures of three of the angles are 120 degrees. Identify the angles, explain your reasoning. Pause the video, figure the angles out, and come back for the right answer. Alright, so now that you're back, we need to find three of the angles that are 120 degrees. We know that one of them here, but we need to find three others. Alright, so for the first one, angle 7 is going to equal 120 degrees because of the exterior angles theorem, the alternate exterior angles theorem. As we learned, since two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, the alternate exterior angles will be congruent. So 120 degrees and angle 7 are equal. So that's the first angle that's 120 degrees. The second one will be angle 5. That's a corresponding angles theorem. It says that two parallel lines cut by a transversal creates two congruent corresponding angles, or 4. Right here you can see this angle and angle 5 are congruent, so angle 5 is 120 degrees. And lastly, the alternate interior angles theorem. We know that angle 3 and angle 5 are equal because of the alternate interior angles theorem. And then earlier we just determined that angle 5 is 120 degrees. So by substituting that, angle 3 also equals 120 degrees. Alright, so here's another practice problem. Find the value of x in this problem, and then come back for the right answer. Okay, so now that you're back, so first off, angle 4 equals 115 degrees because of the vertical angles theorem. We know that if two angles are vertical angles, then they're both equal, so angle 4 is 115 degrees. And then angle 4 plus x plus 5 is equal to 180 degrees because of the consecutive interior angles theorem. We know that these two angles sum up to 180 degrees. And then we're just going to substitute 115 for angle 4. So it's going to be 115 plus x plus 5 is equal to 180. And then x plus 120 is equal to 180 right here. And then we're just going to subtract 180 from both sides, which gives us a final answer of 60 degrees, or just 60. Alright, so prove that if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of alternate interior angles are congruent. So write a proof for this, draw a picture if you need to, and then come back for the right answer. Alright, so now that you're back, we're gonna start off by drawing a small diagram that we need here. So we're just gonna have three angles labeled here, two parallel lines cut by one transversal, the alternate interior angles, and then a vertical angle right here, angles 1, 2, and 3. Now let's get into the proof. So we have our statements and reasons. So line P is congruent to line Q. That's our given. so you don't necessarily need to write this, but this is optional. And angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. That's a corresponding angles theorem. And then angle 3 is congruent to angle 2 because of the vertical angles congruence theorem. And then lastly, angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's the transitive property of equality. So therefore, we've proved that the pairs of alternate interior angles are congruent. But I'm going to go over this one more time. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 because they're corresponding angles. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 2. That's a vertical angles congruence theorem. And then you're just using the transitive property of equality. I hope you guys found this video educational. If you did, like and subscribe and then come back for more educational videos like this.